Have you ever noticed how the number 7 seems to be everywhere in the Bible? It's no coincidence. From the very first page of Genesis to the final prophecies of Revelation, the number 7 is a constant, appearing in crucial moments in the history of humanity and in divine instructions. But why is this number so recurrent? And what does it truly symbolize? It's an intriguing question, because in the Bible, nothing is there by chance. Every word, every number has a deep purpose, and the number 7, in particular, seems to carry a mystical and sacred meaning, revealing much about the way God works in the world and the universe. In this video, we will dive deep into the symbolism of the number 7 and understand what it really means within the divine plan. The number 7 is often seen as the number of completeness, divine perfection, and spiritual purpose. It's not just a randomly used number, but something that reflects the very character of God and His way of operating in the cosmos. From the creation of the world, which was completed on the seventh day, to the cycles of festivals and prophecies, the number 7 is intricately linked to the history of salvation and God's relationship with humanity. But beyond that, does this number have an impact on our lives today? The truth is, even without realizing it, the number 7 may be influencing the way we live and understand our place in the world. In this video, we're going to explore each of these mysteries and see what this number has to teach us. Stay until the end, because what we're about to reveal about the number 7 will surprise you. The number 7 first appears in the Bible in the creation account, a pivotal moment that sets the tone for the entire biblical narrative. God created the world in 6 days, but on the 7th, He rested. This was not just a physical rest, but a moment of sanctification, where the cycle of creation was completed with perfection. Since then, the number 7 has been established as a symbol of divine completeness, a pattern we see repeated in many aspects of the laws and festivals of the people of Israel. But what more can the number 7 reveal to us? Much more than just a symbol of rest. It represents divine order in everything that is done. We will see how, throughout Scripture, this number appears in various forms, always related to the idea of completion, renewal, and divine purpose. Additionally, Jewish laws and festivals also reveal a deep pattern related to the number 7. Festivals like Passover, Pentecost, and Tabernacles are celebrated in cycles of 7, reflecting how God instructed His people to celebrate His presence and blessings. It's not just a matter of tradition, but of alignment with divine timing. The cycle of 7 days and 7 years has always been related to spiritual and material renewal. The sabbatical year and the year of Jubilee are clear examples of this. But do these festivals and laws still hold meaning for us today? Through the eyes of faith, we will see how the number 7 can still guide us on our own journey of renewal and purpose. Now, let's delve into the specific details of how the number 7 has shaped the Scriptures and the divine plan. The creation account in Genesis 1:1-2 is one of the most well-known texts in the Bible. In it, the number 7 appears in its most powerful and symbolic form. God creates the universe in 6 days, meticulously working through each stage of creation: light and darkness, land and seas, plants, animals, and finally, human beings. But upon completing the 6th day, something was still missing for everything to be perfect. It was on the 7th day that God rested and blessed His creation. God's rest was not just an ending to the creative process, but the consecration of time and space. The seventh day became the Sabbath, a day of rest and sanctification, which would serve as a model for the cycle of work and rest for all of humanity. The importance of this day lies in the fact that God not only rested, but He also blessed and sanctified it, making it an eternal symbol of completeness. This cycle of 7 days not only shaped the week we still follow today, but it also defined the concept of sacred time. God created the world in a perfect cycle of 7, where creation and rest were intertwined. This teaches us that hard work followed by rest is a divine principle that should be followed. But the creation in 7 days also shows us another truth, that everything God does is perfect, complete, and without flaws. Every detail of creation was in its right place by the end of the 6th day. But it was the 7th day that gave meaning to it all. This points to the way God operates. He completes what He begins. Even in our own lives, God is always working to bring to completion what He has started. And the number 7 reminds us of this profound truth. Finally, the 7-day cycle of creation reveals something fundamental about God's character and His relationship with humanity. The 7th day is a constant reminder that God desires for humanity to also partake in His rest, enjoying the perfection and completeness that He established. The Sabbath, as a day of rest, is an invitation for humanity to reconnect with the Creator, contemplating the perfection of His work and experiencing the peace and renewal that come from aligning with divine order. Thus, from the beginning of the Bible, the number 7 not only symbolizes perfection, but also invites us to enter God's perfect rest, a rest that transcends time and touches eternity. The number 7 also appears prominently in Jewish festivals and laws, especially in the 7 festivals described in Leviticus 23. These celebrations were not instituted by chance. Each of them has a profound spiritual purpose and is organized in cycles of 7 days or weeks. Passover, Pentecost, Tabernacles, and other celebrations follow a divine order of 7, demonstrating how God ordained the time and religious life of Israel. Through these festivals, the people were constantly reminded of God's holiness and perfection, as well as His provision and care. Once again, the number 7 emerges as God's pattern for worship and spiritual renewal. In addition to the festivals, the number 7 is also present in the laws regarding the rest of the land. Every 7 years, the people of Israel were to observe a sabbatical year, during which the land would rest and slaves were freed. This 7-year cycle was a reminder that the land belonged to God and that the people depended on His provision. And after 7 cycles of 7 years came the Jubilee. In the 50th year, when all debts were forgiven and properties were returned to their original owners. The Jubilee represented both spiritual and material renewal for the people of Israel, a time of restoration that reflected God's just and merciful character. These cycles of 7 are not merely ancient traditions, but revelations of how God organizes time and space. They teach us that life, like the land, needs periods of rest and renewal. The number 7, therefore, is a constant reminder that God has a perfect plan for us, a plan that includes times of work and rest, celebration, and renewal. If we follow this divine pattern, we can experience the fullness of life that God desires for us. However, ignoring this cycle can lead to exhaustion, frustration, and spiritual imbalance. The number 7, in Jewish festivals and laws, invites us to trust in God's timing and participate in His perfect order for our lives. In the tabernacle, the number 7 also plays a crucial role. One of the most iconic images of the tabernacle was the 7-lamp candelabrum, described in detail in Exodus 25:31-40. This candelabrum was not just a functional piece to light the sacred space, but it had profound symbolic meaning. The 7 lamps symbolized the presence of God, the divine light in the midst of the people of Israel. Each of these lamps reflected the perfection and fullness of God's light, illuminating the path for His people. The candelabrum was made of pure gold and sculpted with perfection, representing the glory and holiness of God. And once again, the number 7 was present as a symbol of divine completeness and perfection. The 7-lamp candelabrum in the tabernacle also pointed to God's revelation to His people. The light was a symbol of divine truth and wisdom, and the 7 lamps represented the fullness of that revelation. Through the light, God guided His people, showing them the way of righteousness and holiness. But why 7 lamps? Because the number 7, as we've seen, is the number of perfection and completeness. It reflects God's perfection in all things and His desire for the people to also walk in perfect light. The candelabrum, therefore, was not just a decorative object, but a symbol of God's continuous presence among His people, guiding them and illuminating their lives. Beyond the candelabrum, the number 7 appears in other elements of the tabernacle and the temple. The instructions for the construction of the tabernacle are filled with references to the number 7, showing how every detail was meticulously planned to reflect God's holiness. From the 7 branches of the candelabrum to the 7 altars of sacrifice, everything pointed to the fullness and perfection of worship to God. These details remind us that when we worship God, we must do so with reverence and attention to detail, recognizing the perfection of His plan and His presence in our lives. The number 7 in the tabernacle and the temple is a constant symbol of God's light, truth, and holiness. In the last book of the Bible, Revelation, the number 7 appears with even greater force. Right from the beginning, we are introduced to 7 churches, 7 seals, 7 trumpets, and 7 bowls, all symbolizing events and revelations that shape the destiny of humanity. The number 7 in Revelation represents the complete cycle of God's plan for the world, from judgment to redemption. The 7 churches, for example, are symbols of the different phases in the history of the church, each with its own challenges and triumphs. The 7 trumpets and 7 seals, in turn, represent divine judgments that will bring justice to the world, while the 7 bowls of wrath are the culmination of God's judgment on evil. The 7 churches mentioned at the beginning of Revelation represent different periods in the history of the church, and also different types of faith and devotion. Each church has its virtues and flaws, and through these letters, God instructs and exhorts believers to remain steadfast in the faith. The number 7, once again, symbolizes the entirety of Christ's church, encompassing all times and places. But what is even more fascinating is how the number 7 is used as a divine code, revealing the fate of humanity. The 7 seals, trumpets, and bowls are all parts of a greater plan, which culminates in the establishment of God's kingdom on earth. Finally, the number 7 in Revelation also points to the consummation of the ages and the beginning of a new era. After the judgment and purification of the world, God will bring about a new creation where there will be no more pain, death, or suffering. The number 7 in Revelation is not only a symbol of judgment, but also of renewal and hope. It reminds us that despite tribulations and challenges, God has a perfect plan that will be fulfilled in His time. The number 7, therefore, is a message of hope for all who follow God, assuring them that in the end, justice and peace will prevail. Thus, the number 7, which appears both at the beginning and at the end of the Bible, reveals the unchanging character of God and His perfect plan for humanity. When we deeply analyze the number 7 in Scripture, we realize that it is much more than just a number. It symbolizes God's perfection, completeness, and holiness. From creation to Revelation, the number 7 reminds us that God has a complete and perfect plan for the world and for our lives. The fact that the number 7 appears at such crucial moments in biblical history reveals that God operates in an orderly and intentional manner. He does nothing by chance, and the number 7 is proof of this. But what does this mean for us today? How can the number 7 influence our lives and our faith? The answer lies in understanding that just as God completed creation in 7 days, He is also working to complete His work in us. The number 7, therefore, is an invitation for us to trust in God's plan. It reminds us that just as there are times of work and rest in creation, there are also times of renewal and hope in our lives. With each cycle of 7, God calls us to a new beginning, a new opportunity to grow in our faith and draw closer to Him. Whether in Jewish festivals and laws, in the tabernacle, or in Revelation, the number 7 always points to perfection and renewal. It teaches us that in every phase of life, God is present, guiding us and completing His work in us. The number 7, therefore, is not just a symbol of the past, but a living and present reality in our lives. A constant reminder that God is in control and that His plan will be fulfilled. Finally, the number 7 challenges us to live with hope and expectation. It reminds us that just as God completed creation and will establish a new heaven and a new earth, He will also complete His work in our lives. We can rest assured that, in due time, everything will be revealed, and all things will be made new. The number 7, therefore, is a symbol of faith, hope, and renewal. It inspires us to remain steadfast, knowing that just as God rested on the 7th day, we too will find rest and peace in the fullness of His plan. May the number 7 be a constant reminder that, with God, everything is complete and perfect. The number 7, which appears so powerfully throughout the Bible, is more than just a simple number. It is a symbol of God's perfection and completeness, a reminder that everything He does has a purpose and a timing. From the creation of the world to Revelation, the number 7 teaches us that God is sovereign and that His plan is unfolding perfectly. No matter what we face in our lives, we can trust that, just as God completed creation, He will also complete His work in us. The number 7 invites us to live with faith, knowing that, in the end, all will be renewed and made perfect again. May we trust in God's timing and rest in the assurance of His perfection. As we reach the end of this video, it's impossible not to reflect on the depth and richness of the meaning of the number 7 in the Scriptures. Throughout the Bible, we've seen that this number is not just a numerical reference, but a divine signature, marking the most important moments in the history of salvation and revealing the perfection of God's plan. From the creation of the world to the apocalyptic revelations, the number 7 constantly reminds us that God is in control of all things and that He orchestrates everything with wisdom and perfection beyond our understanding. Every cycle of 7 in the Bible, whether in Jewish festivals, sabbatical years, or the elements of the tabernacle, points to a greater truth. God never leaves His work unfinished. He always completes what He begins. For us, this is a powerful message of hope and trust. Just as God completed creation on the 7th day, He is also completing His work in our lives, even when we can't always see the full picture. The number 7 teaches us to trust in God's timing, to understand that there is a divine rhythm to everything that happens, and that just as on the 7th day God rested, there will be a time of rest and peace for us as well. And in the end, as Revelation shows us, justice will prevail, renewal will come, and evil will be defeated. The number 7 is a constant reminder that God's plan is perfect, and that, in the end, everything will be restored and complete. If this journey through the meaning of the number 7 has touched something inside of you, I encourage you to keep seeking more. The Bible is filled with mysteries and powerful messages that can transform how we see the world and live our lives. Here on the channel, our mission is to explore these mysteries together, dive into the scriptures, and uncover the deep truths that God has in store for us. And if this video brought value to you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to keep receiving content like this. We are just beginning our journey through the mysteries of the Bible, and many more secrets are still to come. The number 7 is just the beginning. There are many other mysteries waiting to be discovered in the scriptures, and we will explore them together, step by step. Stay tuned, because in the next videos, we will continue our quest for knowledge, always with the goal of better understanding God's plan for our lives. See you in the next video.